Hey, lead starters. It's your host, Andrea Vahl. And if you have been following this podcast for any length of time, you know how much I love quotes. In today's episode, we're going to put a compilation of some of my favorite quotes from my guests. Enjoy and get inspired. Hello, dreamers. Welcome to the Late Starters Club, giving you the inspiration, mindset, and tools you need to start something midlife and beyond. Remember, it's never too late to follow your dreams. And that is a perfect segue into your favorite quote, one of your favorite quotes. Why don't you share that with us?
If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Albert Einstein. I love this quote because I think it's a lot of work to try to convey things in a clear and concise fashion. And I think too many people aren't willing to do the work. If you can do the work and process and think about how others are going to receive your message and whether it actually makes sense, whether it's coherent, whether it's focused, whether it's interesting to your target audience, these are really important things. So work on it, practice it, because if you cannot communicate it clearly, you got a lot of work to do.
I heard this somewhere and I have it on a board at home next to my coffee maker so I can see it every day. And it just says amor fati. And it means love your fate. And I don't know why I love that saying so much. Amor fati. Instead of complaining about our history, our failures,
Right.
our rough upbringings, whatever, love your fate, because that built you to be perfectly equipped. It's prepared you for such a time as this.
I use a quote on my email signature. It's just something I happened to say to somebody randomly one day in an email. I said, I have to forge ahead despite my pain and give some meaning to my loss. And she highlighted that because it was just buried in an entire paragraph. And she said, I think this is really what this is all about, that it's healing for me to do this work, because I can't imagine what I'd be doing. But knowing that it changes lives, that it's saving people, that it's making a difference is far more important and more valuable than anything I've ever done in my life.
So I do have this one. So I do try to give myself a quote. And even though that one's simple, I do a weekly and I just put it on my desk.
Yeah. So we'll just say what that is. Since some
sorry.
people might be listening. Yeah.
Life is so beautiful. Live it. Barbara, because I literally want to talk, and I don't refer to myself in third person ever, except for this time. I say this because sadly, I have a friend who's experiencing a very sad diagnosis. And so I'm remembering to live my life in this moment. But the one that I say to myself, get up, dress up, and show up. So even though I work from home and I also have co-working offices, I try to do those things. I try to put on my face. I put on the clothes. I have shoes on, even though, again, I'm sitting in my home office. I literally need to do that because that puts me in the right frame of mind and it gets me excited for the day.
These are on the front of my book and they are original quotes, which I want to share. The first one is, open the doors to possibilities that are all around you, hidden in plain view. We often, when we're looking for solutions, go all over the place and actually they're in front of us. That's the first quote. And then the second quote, why I believe synchronicity is so important, because behind every synchronicity is a miracle waiting to happen. So in your day, when you are prompted, if you meet somebody or your heart tells you go this way, not this way, don't ignore it, because that's a synchronicity knocking at your door. And behind that synchronicity is a miracle that's going to open its way for you to lead that sort of life that you've been longing to lead.
As you mentioned, I'm a pretty diligent person when it comes to training. I am very focused, and I have a quote that I think I picked up somewhere in college that's a little bit more of a stick kind of quote, where it's somewhere out there, your competition is training harder than you and longer than you. And when you meet them head to head, you will lose. And I'm like, I want to make the percentage that I'm going to actually meet that person as minimal as possible. Like, I want to be that person to my competition. So I always believe in practicing harder than I play.
I have a couple, but the one that I tend to lean on the most is it's the yes theory. At the studio, we have yes and. The yes theory is a theory that, like, if you don't ask, you don't know, right? And so there's a group, I think they're on YouTube, called the yes theory. And this is, my son shared it with me. So this is where I got it. It's a total ripoff. But I appreciate you guys because I live by your YouTube channel. Anyway, so it's like finding an agent. If you don't ask, then you don't know. And if you ask and they tell you no, what have you lost but some time? But if they tell you yes, it's a whole new door that just opened.
So I had one in my 20s and 30s and 40s for the longest time, and it's recently just changed. So I'll tell you, the one looking back was always, she believed that she could, so she did. And I would go to that when I needed that little bit of motivation. Just believe in yourself, Lori. Just believe in yourself. It doesn't matter if this person has more than you in knowledge or money. What matters is you believe that you can do this. You can accomplish something. But talking about that confidence in our 50s, I have a whole new saying, and it's Joan of Arc. I am not afraid. I was born for this. And that is my new one, that I literally tap back into that when I need that little bit of inspiration or motivation. And I guess they go hand in hand. Both of them are really about believing in yourself and feeling like you were born for something. So that's my favorite little saying now.
My favorite quote, which I heard from my pastor, and I've said it lots of times, is, if you don't quit, you win. Which is weird because you would think, like, I'm not smart enough to win. I'm not some crazy genius. I don't have the connections. I don't have the charisma. So I don't, like, hitting a home run or scratching the lottery ticket and getting the right numbers. Like, that just seems like a really hard thing to do. But one thing I do know is that I'm a stubborn cuss. I will keep at it. And I know that I don't quit. I don't see myself as some kind of amazing superstar who just hits home runs all the time. I see myself as someone who, I fail all the time, but I just keep learning. So as long as I keep going, as long as you don't quit, you win.
I've always loved Les Brown. He's one of my favorite motivational people. I also love Joel Osteen. Like, he's my Tony Robbins. But Les Brown says, if you can look up, you can get up. And I know that's really simple, but there were times where I literally was like in the fetal position, and I could hear Les Brown in that powerful voice going, you can look up, you can get up. And I just started looking up, and that was all. One foot in front of the other.
I'd wear many hats. I've been a writer. I've worked in the airlines. I've been a publisher. I've been a conductor of an orchestra and a founder of the orchestra. I've done a lot of different things. So they all have different inspiring quotes. But the main one that can be applied to anything comes from Isaac Asimov, the grandfather of quality science fiction writing. But he said something like, if a doctor told me I had only 6 months left to live, I wouldn't mourn. I would type faster. In other words, go out there and do it. Go do what you want to do. Get it done. Move on to the next thing. Get it done. Don't stand around lamenting. Just go do it. And I think it was Nora Roberts who, this is a very telling piece of advice. You can't fix light pain. If you're going to write, just sit down and write it. Don't talk about it. Don't talk about doing it. Join clubs, join this or that. Just sit down and write it. And that applies to anything. You want to learn to climb? Don't spend your life looking online at how to climb and then go climb. You want to get healthier? Go visit Mother Nature, the source of all health. It's so simple.
It's the mantra that I told myself when I first started doing video. And it was the reason behind it. It's what keeps me propelled. It's what happens, or what I say to myself when I see trolls and people that are trying to keep me and prevent me from doing what I know I'm supposed to do. The statement that I tell myself, and now I get to speak this life into other women, is when you do the things that others won't, you get the opportunities that others don't. So I knew that doing video was going to be something a lot of people won't do. And I knew that it would open up, or I suspected that it would open up doors that I had not had yet been privy to be able to open. And it did just that. So I feel like we have opportunities, especially as we get older, to open more doors, to adapt, right? To be able to be open to the experiences that can come, even when other people are saying, no, I'm not going to do that. We have the chance now to make a decision about being more brave, experience the gifts and the rewards that come from that bravery.
One of my favorite quotes is from the movie Braveheart. And I don't know if William Wallace actually said it, but to me, it's pretty deep. And it's, every man dies, but not every man really lives. I think it applies to all people. I know he says men, but also women. When we look at our lives, are we really living life, or do we get caught into the rut, right? People that work in the 9-to-5 job, and they're working and they're working and they're working, and then they retire. And then the sad thing is, you see a lot of times, there's even a statistic too, that like military folks that do 30 years, a lot of them don't live that long after they retire, because that was their whole life.
Wow.
Because they got so focused. And I think that's probably true as well with folks. Like, I even noticed to me when my parents retired, because they didn't really necessarily have a lot of hobbies, I could definitely see where that took away from that vitality. So I think living every day to the fullest, don't dwell on your past, can't change that.
I'm a huge fan of Coco Chanel. And one of her sayings is, you can be gorgeous at 30, charming at 40, and irresistible for the rest of your life.
I have two, actually. Two female comedian quotes. The first one is Lucille Ball, and her quote is, "I'm not funny. What I am is brave." And I thought, how true is that? Because, yeah, anybody can write a joke, right?
Yeah,
But not
yeah.
everyone can stand up there and tell them.
Yeah.
And then my second quote is Joan Rivers, actually, who said, "I made my living saying what everyone else is thinking." And people tell me that I do that all the time.
You do. You just say it. You just say
Yeah.
it. If anyone wants like an honest opinion, just talk to Jess. She will lay it out there for you.
Even with a
And it's
compliment
amazing.
sandwich, I will lay
It's
it
a
out for
compliment
you.
sandwich. That's it. You
Yeah,
know,
but I'll lay it out
everything.
for you. Yeah, so I love that, because it's my aspiration is to make my living saying what other people are thinking. Like, she is the master of doing that, but I would like to incorporate that more, I think.
When I was actually only 10 months into my business, and I finally figuring this thing out, one of the people I talked to was on the TEDx board in Zurich and invited me to speak.
Yeah.
And as I was preparing my talk, I also wanted to have a quote. And my talk was very much about having a vision, following your dreams. And I found this beautiful quote by Oprah. "You've got to follow your passion. You've got to figure out what you love, who you really are, and have the courage to do that."
Here's the quote that had a huge impact on my career and my life. And it was from Peter Drucker. When I was in graduate school, he would teach in the Harvard case study method. We'd have these complex problems. We'd have to try to figure out, how do we get out of these situations? And he would say, a great leader doesn't need to have all the right answers. A great leader needs to have the right questions. And that has guided me. That has completely formed my consulting style. I think that's why a lot of people think I'm humble, because I honor people. Everybody is an expert in their own way. I don't tell people what to do, but I listen and I ask the right questions. And what I find is, when I ask the right questions, people usually already know the answers. They're just not listening to themselves. So that has been a powerful influence on my style, on my writing, and on my consulting.
So my favorite quote, since I came out here, I actually have it next to my computer on a little sticky note, because I'm like sticky note girl. It's how good can it get? So if I get down, I think, wait a minute, how good can it get? And it just takes you to another place. And the book I got it from is this one. It's called Reality Shifters, Guide to High Energy Money. This was a guest on one of the shows I worked on. Cynthia Sue Larson wrote this.
Yeah.
And that's her quote throughout the book, is how good can it get? If you can imagine it, you can create it. So go there. So I do that all the time, is how good can it get? Oh my gosh, it can get even better, and allowing that. I think sometimes we have a resistance to goodness, like we don't feel worthy. We don't feel like we deserve it. That's been a big thing for me to overcome, is I just actually just deserve, and not in an entitled way, but in, I've paid my dues in life, like I deserve. So how good can it get?
I actually have one that it's from an author. Her name is Hilary DePiano, as I said it correctly. We all get the exact same 365 days. The only difference is what we do with them.
I have one, and it is from Rumi. And let me just give it a bit of context quickly, if you don't mind. Because when it comes to the question of how can I get wealthy, the most automatic response is, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do the other thing, right? People go to knowledge, or I need to learn this or learn that, right? So they go to knowledge and action instead of going to, what do I need to change in my belief system so that I can do things more easily, so that I can have better flow, so that I can be more congruent with my goals and not sabotage them. It's not natural to go to, it's not what I need to do differently, it's what I need to believe differently.
Right.
And that is the core message. So this quote sums that up. Yesterday, I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today, I am wise, so I am changing myself.
So this is one that we post from time to time up on our Instagram, and it says, if her bra and her panties match, it wasn't you who decided to have sex. I love that. Float it out.
So
Float
good.
it.
From Elisa. And mine is be intentional and take action. And it's
Yeah.
something that we have shared. Be intentional, no matter if it's in your marriage, in your business, wherever it may be. You got to be intentional, and then you got to take action, because without action, we're just going to sit in the same spot.
There's one that I really like a lot, and it's life is what we make it, always has been, always will be. Grandma Moses. Grandma Moses was a very famous Americana painter. She didn't start painting until she was 78.
Oh my gosh.
78. And she's an icon of in the painting world for this particular genre. So I just think it's great. And that whole thing is, life is what we make it, always has been, always will be.
So I want to share from a coach that I had a couple years ago that it's such a great reflection that I go back to at least once a year, sometimes a couple times a year. But her question to me was, what are you not doing that you want to be doing? And that question moved me across the country, and moved my business, moved everything. And then the other quote from Anise Nin. I always have a hard time with her name, but I've always liked this. And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk to blossom and to bloom.
So a friend of mine who was helping me out many years ago back in college gave me this quote from a movie, and I use it, and it fits into what I was telling you about the assumptions that people make about me. So here it goes. You can never fall flat on your face if you're bending over backwards to help somebody out.
I think a quote that has meant a lot to me appalled me the first time I heard it. I thought, that can't be right. It's the quote by Albert Einstein that says, imagination is more important than knowledge. And when I first encountered that, I was at a stage in my life where I put a lot of stock in my knowledge. I thought that the value I brought to what I was doing was having a lot of answers. And later I came to realize that often the most valuable person in the room is not the one with all the answers. It's the one who's making sure we're asking the right questions. And so I'll share a longer version of that quote with you from Albert Einstein, because I really love this quote now. I've come to embrace it. He said, imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited to all we know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there ever will be to know and understand. And I love that, because I feel like I'm on a journey of learning to embrace more things, more knowledge of myself, more knowledge of the world, and more knowledge of how my interacting with people in the world can make a difference.
My favorite quote at this point in my life is by a writer. Her name is Audre Lorde. And it says, self-care is not about self-indulgence. It's about self-preservation. The reason it resonates with me is because a lot of times when you hear people talk about self-care, they talk about getting their nails done or getting a massage or going shopping. And those things are awesome. I love those things too. But when you think about this quote, it says self-care is about self-preservation. Preservation means keeping something alive. It means preventing decay. And so get a massage and a manicure and all that, it's not going to keep you alive.
So I have two. So can I give you two?
Yes, two is good.
One of them is, actually, I'll give you three. Okay.
Oh, wow. Bonus.
Dress for the job you want, not the job you have.
Uh-huh.
That's one. Choose the hills you will die on carefully. And the third one is better done than perfect. I am not a perfectionist, thank God. And so I think I've heard people talk about B- work, B+ work. People need your work. So get out there. I heard James Wedmore say this once, is your people are out there drowning and they need your work and they don't have time for you to build a yacht. So you get into the rickety rowboat and go out there. They will be so happy to see you. And so let's go all get in our rowboats and go.
I just came across, I must have been living under a rock because I'd never heard of her before, but Jamie Kernan, I can't remember her last name, but
yeah, Lima.
One of the things that she said really resonated with me, and I'm not going to get this exactly right, but it was something like rejection is God's protection. And I would add rejection is God's direction, because when you're told no, it's God sending you in the right direction. So don't get upset when you hear no. And then the next quote that comes from me, and I haven't memorized it. This is my own quote and I haven't memorized it yet. But during the time that I went through the fire aftermath, I had to change who I am, because you have to change who you are before you can grow and become bigger. You have to be bigger so that you can serve in a different way.
So one that I heard in the past 3 months, and I'll just read it from my notes for you. It says, we have to learn to let our work on us until we become the person for whom it can work. Don't play at your work your work. We have to let our work on us, because we're going to work regardless, right? Either we're going to work and we're going to have success, or we're going to work and we're going to have failure. But if we don't let that failure work on us and sort of work away or work out the things that need to be worked out so that we can be successful at the thing we were meant to be successful at, then we've wasted that failure, right? So don't play at the work the work. Either way, it's good work.
My very favorite quote is by the late Andy Rooney of 60 Minutes fame. And it's that everyone wants to live on top of the mountain, but all the growth and happiness occurs while you're climbing it. And that's really what happiness is about. It's about the experiences. And the other thing I always want people to keep in mind, and there's been a lot of studies on this, Sean Ager, who wrote The Happiness Advantage, has pointed out that happiness is more likely to lead to success than success is to lead to happiness. And so that's why I love that quote so much.
And the other quote I really love, that I don't actually know who said it, but I wrote it down because I really loved it, was create the story that you want to live. And I think that even now, like in this phase of my life where that's really what I'm trying to focus mostly on, is not letting everybody else dictate who I am, what I'm doing. I don't want to find myself in that position again where my whole identity is wrapped up into one piece of my life. I want to make sure that I am writing the story, that I'm doing the things that I love, the things that are challenging, and maybe even the things that scare me once in a while, because I want to have a story that's worth telling. I want my kids to know that there's something worth talking about with their mother. And if nothing else, that I have interesting things to talk about to other people. So that's where I love that particular quote as well. Okay, and so our last and final question, as always. So you have gotten more than your fair share of favorite quotes, but what is your favorite quote? What is your motivational saying that keeps you going when times get tough?
So I have a couple of favorite quotes. One is shorter, from Abraham Lincoln: let no feelings of discouragement
prey upon you, and in the end, you are sure to succeed. And I love that because I love the idea of the feelings preying upon you. Discouragement is the enemy. You can just keep going and you're going to succeed. And the other one I love is from Theodore Roosevelt. It is far better it is to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy much nor suffer much, because they live in the gray twilight that knows neither victory or defeat. And I think that for me is about just getting out there and trying. And there have been plenty of failures that I have had that it just didn't go right. I've launched courses that just took crickets. I've put things out there. I've thought, oh my God, I've taken it too personally. And what it's about is just continuing to get out there and try things and put things out there and not worry and not be tied to that outcome, and to say this life is one big experiment, right? We're out there in the arena doing things and not just sitting watching other people. Hope that was helpful, and make sure you grab the free guide, Top Tools for Late Starters, on the website at latestartersclub.com. And let's turn dreaming into doing.